Hello everyone, it's me Tabo and welcome to another episode of Coding for Superheroes. So in today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to create this really cool effect right here. And if you think that this is cool, wait till the end. I've got a little bonus prepared for you and I'm going to show you how you can make this look even way cooler. So if you are not yet a subscriber, then take 1 second to just hit that subscribe button and make sure that you like as well. This is much appreciated because this helps me a lot. And make sure that you hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on upcoming tutorials. So let's just jump right in. Well, as usual, I've got my boilerplate code over here. So in this episode, we're gonna also include the Unreal Bloom effect. So I'm gonna be using a bit of passes or shader passes as part of the lesson. So I'm going to use an effect composer, shader pass, output pass, render pass, Unreal Bloom pass, and copy shader. With these ones, I will explain why I actually have these two. As I explained in my previous tutorial that I kind of redid so that I could show you guys how to do the outline effect once again. In the recent examples or in the latest versions, they use the output pass for a lot of the post-processing effects. Right now, the copy shader is how I did it in previous tutorials and it still works, so whether this will be obsolete in the future, I am not really sure, but I included it because also there are minor differences, or let's say maybe major differences, you know what I mean, but mainly in how you adjust your post-processing effects. And I personally like how the copy shader looks. It's the kind of look that I want to go for. Output pass looks a bit washed out, so I just wanted to kind of include both of them because it seems like output pass is what they're using now. So I just don't want to talk too much about it anyway. So let's just kind of continue. So I've got my renderer as usual. So I'm setting the size and the pixel ratio, and then I'm appending it to our document. Then I've got a camera and I'm using the inner width divided by the inner height to create our aspect ratio. I've got a scene and the background is black. I've got a camera and I've positioned my camera at the Z position of 30. And I've also got an orbit control. So inside here, this is just the usual render function and everything will be rendered in here. Okay, so we're going to start by creating a point light. And I'm just going to set a few parameters for our light. So the distance will be 16.5. I'm going to set cast shadow to true. And then I'm going to set the shadow bias to minus 0.005. And then I'm going to set the shadow map size width to 1024. And I'm going to do the same here for the height, also 1024. I'm going to set the camera near to 0.1. And I'm going to set the camera far to 1000. And then I'm going to set the light intensity to 5. Next, I will create a sphere geometry and I will set its size to 5, and then we're going to create a variable called vertex array. So here we'll be accessing the position array of our geometry, and then we're going to create a vertex indices. This is where our indices are going to be placed, and then we're going to create a variable called mesh index, and that will be equal to 0. So over here, we've got a for loop and we're using the vertex array's length. And in here, we're going to say index equals to new 3.vector3. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're just going to take these values here and we're just going to add them to our vertex indices. And then next up, I'm going to create a mesh. Now this is going to be an instanced mesh, and this instanced mesh will be created from a torus geometry, and I will give it the radius of 2. And then we'll be using a mesh Phong material, and these are the values that I'm going to be using. Opacity 1.0, specular will be white. Well, these values, I'm just going to remove them just so that they don't cause confusion, but these are values that I was using when I was testing different materials, and since a mesh Phong does not have any of those properties, yes, they're not necessary. So the transparent will be set to true. And so for the count, we'll be using the vertex indices length as our count. And then underneath here, we're going to set the mesh's receive shadow to true. I've set this on reserve and this will come in handy later. So over here, we're going to create a for loop and we'll be using the vertex index length. Okay, so basically to kind of simplify it, what I'm doing here is I'm using the vertice position of the sphere that I created. and I'm basically creating 3 times the amount of the count, and for each vertice there'll be 3 torus meshes that will be sitting in that position, but not exactly in that position. There'll be some offsetting. So basically for each vertice I'll be offsetting 3 torus meshes, and they'll be distributed or all around the sphere. So that's basically what that's doing. So we're using the sphere's positions and we're placing instances of the torus over there. So this is how we go about it. I created a variable called position, and in here and we say the position is equal to new3.vector, and inside we'll take our vector indices as i.x, and then we'll add math.sign, and inside the math.sign we're going to use math.random times math.pi divided by 3, and then we're going to say minus math.sign, and inside math.sign we're going to put math.random, and math.random will be multiplied by math.pi divided by 3. And we're going to kind of carry on doing the same thing for the x, y, and the z. So just take all of that in. All right, and so next we're going to set our scale. So our scale will be new3.vector3, and inside we're going to say math.random times 0.15. That's for the x, and for y will be math.random times 0.15, and once again we'll do the same for our z. So down here we're going to do the same for our quaternion. It'll be math.random times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 as well. Okay, over here I've set a color, but I actually won't be using the color because I just excluded it. But if you wanted to also change the color of the instances, then you could use color. But for this particular tutorial, this won't be necessary, so I'm just gonna exclude it. All right, so we create a variable called matrix. This is equal to a new3.matrix4, and in here we're just gonna compose it using these values over here, and then we're gonna set the matrix of our instance mesh using mesh.index, and then using the matrix value. Then after that we're just gonna increment our mesh index value. And so next I'm gonna create 2 variables. This is inst mesh color. These are the colors that our material is going to be lerping between. Okay, so as you've seen, there's a color change in the material, so these colors are responsible for that. So we create inst mesh color 1 and inst mesh color 2, and these are the values. And next we're going to create a texture loader, and with this texture loader we're going to load our texture that we're going to be using as our shadow map. Now in terms of the textures that you can use, I created this using Krita. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Krita, but Krita is an open source 2D graphic application similar to Photoshop or a GIMP. So with it you can create these patterns. They are already in the software. You can just basically create these patterns from there and then just use different variations. I'll show you the different variations I have. I will not really show you the effects because each one is kind of different. You need to set the alpha test to a different setting so that it looks proper. So but just as a side note, you can create this with any software pretty much. All right, and then we're gonna create a sphere. This is our light sphere. This is the sphere that's gonna be projecting the shadow map. Okay, so this will be the size. We're gonna set the size to 0.2. It's gonna be a mesh Lambert, and inside the mesh Lambert we're gonna set the alpha map to our texture over here, and then we're gonna set the alpha test to 0.9. And then after that we're gonna make our light sphere cast shadow. So we're gonna set cast shadow to be equal to true. Then we're gonna add the mesh to our scene, and then here we also add the light sphere. Okay, the mesh is this one over here, our instance mesh. So over here we're adding the instance mesh and our light sphere to the scene. All right, so next we're gonna create our shader properties, or basically we're gonna create the different shader passes. So over here we're gonna create effect copy, and this is created using a new shader pass, and inside we're gonna pass it the copy shader. Over here we're gonna create our composer, bloom composer. This is made with an effect composer, and inside we're gonna pass it our renderer. And then we're gonna create a render pass, and this render pass will be created using a render pass class, and inside we'll pass it the scene and the camera. And then next we create a bloom pass. This is created from our Unreal bloom pass, and these are the settings that we need. This is for our aspect ratio, so we'll create a new vector2 object, and then inside we give it these values, window.inner width and window.inner height. And these are the settings for our bloom. This is our radius, this is threshold, and this is, I think it's strength, sorry, forgot what it is, but you can go to the library and have a look. But these are the settings that you need to set for the bloom. Next, then we'll take our bloom composer, and then we'll add the render pass to it, and then we'll add the bloom pass, and then last but not least, then we'll add the effect copy. All right, so one last thing, we'll be also adding our light. So I'm just gonna add the light over here as well. Okay, so just underneath here, I'm gonna create a variable for clock. So this is gonna be our 3.clock variable, and we're gonna be using that for our animation. All right, so over here, I'm gonna create a variable called elapsed time, and this will be getting our clock.getElapsed time. And then after that, this is where we're gonna be rotating our light sphere. Light sphere is the sphere that is projecting our shadow map, so we're gonna rotate it on the x-axis, and then we're gonna rotate it as well on the y-axis. We'll just be using a math absolute, using math sign, using the elapsed time, and then we're gonna multiply it by 0.002 plus 0.005, and over here we're gonna do the same, but we're going to multiply it by 0.9 times 0.002 plus 0.005. And then here, this is where we're going to be lerping the colors. So for the material, we're going to lerp between these two colors over here. Once again, using the math absolute, inside using the math sign and elapsed time times 1.5. And then we're going to times that by 1. Then last but not least, here we've got the rotation for the instance mesh. So we're going to be rotating it on the y-axis, and we're going to be incrementing it by 0.009. Okay, so everything should be in. Okay, no, sorry, one last thing that I definitely should not forget. Okay, first of all, I'm gonna set our camera's look at. So the camera.lookat will be equal to scene.position, and for rendering we'll be using our bloom composer. Okay, so maybe what I'll do is first I will do a normal render so that you can see the difference what the bloom effect is adding to the image. All right, so we're going to use our bloom composer, but for now I'm just going to turn it off. All right, so we can then run our server and then have a look at the results. There's one thing that I forgot to also include. It's on the renderer to set the shadow map .enable to true, and then the shadow map type that we're going to be using is 3.PC soft shadow map. Okay, so just do that, then I think everything should be fine then. All right, so this is what our effect looks like. Now because I have a bonus that I've prepared for you. Originally I also did it with a lesser, let me just explain, like the size over here. Okay, if you make it 1, it's not a huge difference, but there is a difference, you know. So originally this is how I created it, and for the bonus effect it works better when the radius is 2. So I'm going to turn it back to 2. So this is what it looks like without our bloom effect. So now we're going to turn on our bloom effect and see what that looks like. Okay, we have to also turn this off. Well, in this case it's still going to render with bloom effect because it's going to render it twice, but we don't need that, so just going to turn that off. All right, here we go. So this is what our effect looks like. Looks pretty cool, must say. So all right, yeah, basically if we didn't have like a little bonus coming, this would be the end of the lesson. But if you think this looks cool, wait till you see what's coming next. Okay, so we're just gonna spruce it up a little bit, and let me show you what that's gonna be. So just over here, doesn't really matter where you do it. We're gonna create another mesh. We're gonna create a box geometry, and we're gonna set it to this size. And we're going to be using a mesh foam material. We're going to set the specular to white. We're going to blow it up all the way. And we're going to set the side to backside. Okay, so we're going to now add that to our scene. And we will set the receive shadow to true. And then in addition to that, just over here, just underneath our elapsed time, we're going to make some changes to our light. So we're just going to create a bit of animation for our light so that it changes color as well. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. Doesn't seem like much, but the effect is actually quite cool. It makes a huge difference to how everything is gonna look. I just need to change one more thing. Our instance mesh. Yes, I'm gonna turn this back to 2, and I'm also gonna set the cast shadow to true as well for our instance mesh. All right, so there we go. So with what we've just added, this is what our effect is looking like. I don't know about you, but I think this looks pretty cool. I mean, you can increase the size of the box. You can play around with that as much as you want, but yeah, this kind of gives you the base, to play on, and then you can do whatever you like with it. But yeah, overall, so this is what I had planned for you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I have. And once again, if you've watched till this far and you have not subscribed, now is your chance to subscribe. Hit that like button, most definitely, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any more of these wonderful goodies that I've got for you. So without saying too much, I just want to say love and peace. I'm out.